Hey guys, tonight I'm not taking you to a mighty kingdom. No emperor, no war horses, no epic battles worth recording. Just a tavern. Old, smelling of people, and strangely warm. There are no leather chairs, no handsome bartender named Kyle, no jazz music, no ice cubes, and absolutely no one asking. What would you like to drink to forget tonight? There are only tired people. Tired from deep fields, from complicated gods, from the fact that no one has invented toilet paper. And they come here, not for fun, but just to sit, to have someone pour them something warm. It doesn't have to be good, just not as cold as the world outside. And tonight you'll sit among them. That place isn't a bar. It's an unofficial news center, an emotional train station, an emergency room for the soul. The only place where a knight, a farmer, and a poet can all get drunk and sit side by side like they've always belonged there. No currency needed, no ID required. Just bring a slightly old heart and the smallest of wishes to be understood, without having to explain that you're tired. So turn off the lights, turn on a fan that hums like the soul of someone who's tired of life. Pull the blanket up cover, even the wounds you never told anyone about. And let me tell you a story about a tavern where strangers sit side by side, raise their mugs, say nothing, and still feel like they're not alone. Dusk had just fallen. Not the ivy on brick walls kind of old, but old enough that even Google Maps would stay silent. Dusk had just fallen. You don't know the name of this place. No one's asking for yours either. You walk barefoot, or maybe in straw sandals, through a damp market, soaked in the smell of people, rice, and cooling sheep fat. Sand clings to your heels. Wind lashes at your hair like it's testing if you're a local. You're not. You're just a stranger walking through the offbeat cries of vendors, grilled onions, pickled cucumbers, dried goat blessed by the gods themselves. A child darts past trailing laughter. An old woman sits by a doorway, braiding rope, talking to absolutely no one. And then you smell it. The beer. Not the crisp kind from a Super Bowl commercial. This one is strong, fermented, sweet and sour with a hint of mold like yeast and thyme, finally decided to get married. That smell mingles with smoke from clay ovens and laughter echoing from somewhere unseen. It doesn't call you, it pulls you, gently, but undeniably. You turn a corner, down an alley filled with straw, past a pile of cow dung that may still be warm, and then you see it. No signboard, just a crooked house leaning like it's deep in thought. A wooden slab above the door bears a faded carving, maybe of a beer barrel, or a tipsy hippo soaking in yeast. A drunk man stands outside singing, or crying, or calling someone's name, or flirting with the wall. You step onto the packed dirt doorstep. Someone once vomited here, but now it's dried into unspoken history. The door isn't locked. It's just an old curtain swaying gently in the breeze, as if whispering, "Come in." No one will ask why. Here it's enough that you're tired. So you pull back the curtain, step inside, not knowing exactly what you're looking for, but knowing one thing for sure tonight. You just need to sit down. You've just stepped past the curtain, and the first thing that hits you isn't a greeting, not light, but smell. A thick air like soup blended with wood smoke, sweat, damp straw, charred meat, and something else. Unidentifiable, but definitely aged. That smell slaps you in the face like a pat on the back from an old dorm mate who never cleaned his side of the room. You cough gently. No one turns around. Not because they're rude, but because Coughing is just too normal here. Before you can get used to the smell, the light starts to show itself flickering amber, like the heartbeat of someone who's already tipsy. The flame comes from a fire pit in the middle of the room, burning like it too wants to forget something. Everything in this space is low. Low ceiling, low seats, low lines of sight, and pleasantly low expectations. There's no front desk, no uniformed staff, just a few patchy straw mats, warped wooden blocks for seats, and a scatter of jars, bowls, buckets, and barrels lying around like props from an unfinished play. A man lies sideways, face buried in a cloak, lips mumbling a song in what might be Sumerian, or maybe the language of a soul waiting to check out. An old woman sits near the wall, flipping beans in her hand, like she's reading her fortune. A dog of unknown ownership rests its head on a drunk man's leg, breathing slow. You stop at the threshold, confused, not sure where to sit, not sure if you're supposed to order, not sure if you're interrupting anything. And then a man waves, says nothing, just waves. He's sitting beside a large ceramic jar, eyes half-lidded but warm. You nod slightly, walk over, sit down on a straw mat steeped in the scent of people, time and something. Hard to define. You don't need to order, don't need to explain. No one asks who you are, where you're from, who you've loved or what you've done wrong. You just sit and take a deep breath. For the first time in a long time, no one is judging you. No critical eyes. No pressure to smile politely or to say I'm fine when you're not. Here you don't need to be the best version of yourself. You just need to be you. Worn, tired, messy, but real. Across the room, someone's singing an old tune off beat. Someone else is swaying to it, also off beat. You don't find it strange. You find it right. Because here no one needs you to be on beat. They just need you to be here. You haven't even settled in when someone gently pushes a clay jar toward you. No introduction, no cheers, no menu. Just a silent gesture. And a look that seems to say drink. Everyone here's been thirsty. You look down. In front of you is a round earthen jar about the length of your forearm. Its brown glaze chipped from time and touch. The liquid inside is murky like rice milk mixed with memories. Stuck in the mouth of the jar is a straw made of reed, hollow, long and gently bent like someone had used it before. Someone not particularly hygienic. You glance around as if looking for someone to stop you. No one. You sigh, reach for the straw, take a slow sip, and then the world pauses. No, it's not delicious. It doesn't taste like any beer you've had. Not cold, not fizzy, not fragrant. No hints of citrus, roasted malt, or caramel finish. Just a thick liquid, warm, cloudy, heavy with fermented barley and a trace of ash. The first note is lightly sour like a sadness without a name. Then a faint bitterness follows thin but real like a memory chewed on too long. And finally a rough texture crawls down your throat, carrying a touch of fine grit, as if time itself has fallen into each sip. You cough lightly. Every cell in your body seems to ask at once, what did I just swallow? Is this legal? How did people survive this era? You set the straw down, silent. After a moment you realize no one cares whether you like it or not. Here beer isn't for enjoyment, it's for survival. Because the well water is dirty. Because the river may hold dead fish, garbage or curses. Because boiling water takes firewood. Because the weather is brutal, bodies are exhausted, and beer naturally fermented might just save you from diarrhea to death. You look back at the beer jar. It's not pretty, not clean, not inviting, but there's something honest about it. So you take another sip. No more grimacing, no more doubt, just someone needing to be soothed. And then something happens. By the third sip, that sour tang isn't so harsh anymore. You feel it. Warm. A warmth not from temperature, but from this you're drinking with others, in the same room, from the same jar, with the same unspoken weariness. You remember the times you drank beer alone in modern bars under blue-white lights, everyone staring into phones. You remember those pretty craft beer bottles you didn't really need. You remember the last time you said cheers and no one met your eyes. And you get it now. It's not because ancient beer tastes good. It's because it's real. It's crude, unpolished, imperfect. Like the people sitting around you now. Like you. Like all the things that keep existing even when no one celebrates them. You close your eyes, take another sip, slowly, and you think, if this is the brew of survivors, then I want to belong here too. You've just swallowed your first sip of beer, thick like watery porridge, warm, like a rejected confession, when you realize 4 pairs of eyes are staring at you. Not the, oh hey, your new kind of look, but this person might be human, or a god in disguise, or someone who owes someone money in here kind. You scan the room. Firelight from the central hearth dances across faces flushed with alcohol or cold or both. And strangely, in this chaos, you realize you're not alone. The first person you notice is a short guy by the window, barely up to your shoulder hair, like a grease-soaked bird's nest, hands all gnarled like dry twigs, and he smiles with exactly 1 tooth shining like recycled sword metal. This seat is mine, but today I'm generous. Can you pay for it? No, you don't understand what he just said, but you nod, because you'd rather not get your eye scooped out with a wooden spoon. Then you hear singing from the dark corner behind, a raspy voice haunting. No mic, no stage, just a 3-stringed instrument and the faraway gaze of someone who has loved and maybe fought dragons, or at least a drunk goose. She doesn't look at you, but her eyes, when they pass, seem to ask, where did you come from? And what debts did you bring? A couple nearby is arguing with chicken bones. You're sitting next to a wooden table worn down so far your chin could fall through the cracks. Across from you a couple is breaking up. No getting engaged. No betting on who's doing dishes. You're not sure. The man taps chicken bones like a judge with a pen summoning divine punishment. The woman strikes back with a wooden spoon, every hit like a centuries-old debt being collected. You try to scoot your chair back. Too late. They offer you a half-eaten piece of bread. Try it, they say. It's not poisoned. You nod, then hide it under the bench. And then, the final glance. An old man sitting by the fire, silent, his cloak threadbare, his hands trembling but eyes shining like someone who's lived through 3 plagues, 2 wars, and a love never spoken aloud. He looks at you, doesn't smile, but doesn't sneer. He tilts his head, and in that one look you understand. Here you're new, but not a stranger. The emotional peak when strangers feel like kin. Amid the clinking of cups, a barking dog, and someone vomiting behind the straw curtain, your chest suddenly softens. Not because the beer's good, not because the room is warm, but because something in these strangers' eyes reminds you of home. Some kind of home. Maybe not real. Maybe just a borrowed memory. But here in the haze of smoke-damp leather, and voices scratching your heart, you feel even just for a moment accepted. In a corner near the back door, where straw is piled like it's waiting for someone to collapse into it again, a group of young men are drinking, truly drinking. Not the polite cheers kind, not the just for fun kind, but the kind of drinking where beneath every tunic someone is trying to swallow something they can't name. You watch them, 3 of them shoulder to shoulder, each with a small jar nearly empty. They don't talk much, just nod occasionally and drink again. One of them laughs, but is sharp, twisted, and it gets stuck in his throat. He leans forward, hands on the table, as if what's in his belly isn't just brew, but a whole load of regret. The man beside him pats his back. No comfort, no questions, just a touch. The kind of touch from someone who's bent like that too. And then one of them stands, the youngest, hair not yet long, beard not yet full, eyes red from the smoke from the beer, or from something breaking inside that he doesn't know how to fix. He speaks loudly, but no one hears the words, just trembling sounds between laughter and the wind sneaking through the cracks in the door. He tilts his head back, drinks the jar dry, then throws it to the floor. That sound rings out like a declaration, or a silent cry for help. Pause. No one scolds him. No one yells. The straw sweeper just walks over, picks up the broken jar, sets it aside. Because here everyone's had a broken jar. Some broke it in drunkenness, some in rage, some because it was the only way to say they were hurting. You look at them, those young men, and you realize they're not drunk because they're happy. They're drunk to be allowed to be weak. Drunk so they can sit beside each other without needing to say I'm tired. Drunk so they can lean on one another and not feel ashamed. One slams the table crying. Another laughs like the world's still worth it. And the last one pours a small sip of beer onto the ground, like a toast to someone who's no longer there. You stay quiet. Don't interrupt. Don't ask. You just sit there in a room full of smoke brew and scattered memories and think, maybe. We don't have to understand everyone. We just need to be there when they can't even understand themselves. Tavern food. Things you never thought were edible, but still ate. Just as you're settling into the quiet warmth of these strangers, a smell drags itself past your nose. The smell of porridge, no. Burnt onion close. The smell of dinner you're not sure belongs to tonight, or leftovers from last Friday. The main course, pottage porridge. A daily special that never changes. A ceramic bowl is placed in front of you. Its contents thick grey-brown like the heart of someone on a sunless day. You stir it lightly and see a piece of undercooked radish floating like it's trying to escape. Some leafy thing, maybe a herb, maybe moss from the kitchen wall, and a chunk of meat, or meat-like, or something that once had bones. The dish is called pottage, made from whatever hasn't yet escaped the tavern. There's no recipe, only history. You ask the server, what's in it? They look at you for a long time, then reply, I don't know. I've just been adding water to the pot since yesterday. You nod and eat, not because it's good, but because it's warm. There's cheese and bread on the table. You bite into the bread hard as an old sidewalk brick, not because it's stale, but because it was born this way. They call it rye bread. You bite it and it feels like lifting weights. You swallow it and it feels like you've signed up for dental insurance. The cheese has grown a soft fuzz. not for warmth, but because it's fermenting on its own terms. You sniff it, and it reminds you of childhood. If your childhood involved goats, you don't ask what kind of milk the cheese came from. Not because you're not curious, but because no answer would help it go down better. Sides dried fish, salted eggs, and occasionally, surprise. The person next to you gets a piece of fish dry as post-breakup feelings. Chewy, salty, sunbaked at 117 degrees. He eats like, yeah, survival's good enough. Another has a salted egg in a small bowl. Slightly cracked, sharp-smelling, still considered a luxury here. You watch him lift the egg like he's holding onto a rare, intact memory. You look around. No one has spoons. They use hands. Or spoons from home. Or seashells. Or anything that can scoop and won't puncture the bowl. No napkins. Sleeves serve. Some wipe their mouths with deep breaths. Very deep. Aesikin. And the strangest thing, the food is bad, but not awful. Because in the clinks of spoon on pottery, soft laughter, and someone farting in the corner, you realize something strange. It tastes good, not because of flavor, but because here everyone eats like you. No one sits apart. No one flaunts their meal. No one rushes. Only people tired, hungry, trying to hold a dinner together that doesn't feel empty. You bite another piece of hard bread. This time, you don't even flinch. The fire in the center of the tavern no longer blazes high. It burns low, glowing red like the eyes of someone who's loved too much and slept too little. Smoke drifts slowly to the thatched roof, then escapes through tiny cracks where the night wind slips in like a whisper. Night is here. If there's anything to say, say it now. Tomorrow might not come. You sit there still holding a cooled ceramic bowl. The last sip of beer has lost its ferment. Only the aftertaste remains of something that once felt warm. No one speaks, but the silence here isn't scary. It feels like an old song everyone knows, but no longer needs to sing. There's a storyteller. It's the old man who was sitting near the fire earlier. He doesn't introduce himself, doesn't say his name. He just starts as if picking up a tale left unfinished 30 years ago. His voice is low, raspy, breaking between each sentence. Back then I had a tavern like this, smaller. Only 3 tables, a stove, and 1 person waiting for me every night. Now, the tavern is gone. So is the person. No one interrupts. No one asks. We strangers just listen quietly, as if the story could have been our own. The young man who was drunk earlier seems a bit soberer now. He leans on his knee, crooked smile. I left home before I could say sorry to my dad. I thought there'd be time, but booze moves faster than time. And now, I tell stories to strangers because the ones I knew aren't around anymore. You turn your head not out of boredom, but because there's something stuck in your throat. It's an old woman. Wrinkled hands, worn clothes, but eyes that shine. She raises a small string like a necklace woven from dried grass. My daughter made this when she was 6. She died at 7. I didn't keep it to remember, I kept it so I had something to remind me. There was once a reason to keep living. You look around. No one laughs. No one cries. Just firelight reflecting in people's eyes and something deeper inside. You realize we're not drunk from alcohol. We're drunk from finally having a place where we don't have to be strong. Out there, people tell stories to get attention, to gain likes, to become someone. But here, people tell stories so they don't explode, so they don't melt in loneliness. So a piece of the past can stay alive even just for a few more minutes. The fire dims. Someone adds more wood. Someone else quietly moves closer to the person next to them. You no longer feel like the newcomer. You no longer feel like the outsider. Because some pains don't need the same story, just the same firelight. Games by the fire, where memory plays just to hurt less. The fire dies down, not bright enough to light faces, but enough to show those still here. Aren't ready to leave. No one wants to talk anymore, but no one stands up either. So like a reflex older than language, someone pulls out a bag of goat knuckle bones. You see an old man toss a few onto the table, tap his fingers once, then catch them mid-air. The group of young men gathers instantly. No one announces the start, but you know, this is a game, but also a way to not think about the weight sitting on their chests. The goat bones, real bones, are smoothed, numbered, and sometimes dyed purple. The rules are simple. Toss them up, catch them, don't drop, and absolutely don't let memory interfere when your hands shake. A young guy misses, bursts out laughing like he's never cried. A girl catches them all, then holds each piece like they know things she doesn't dare speak. A scruffy bearded man snaps his fingers, then hums a tune with no clear melody. Hey girl, dawn's coming, but my wine's still full. The guy beside him jumps in. If you don't marry someone, wait for me next harvest. The whole tavern laughs, a real laugh, not because the song is good, but because in the quiet night, someone was brave enough to start singing. When fire is just glowing embers, when the bowl of beer is cold, when the singing ends, when the stories trail off, when your hand rests on the mat, but your heart rests on the back of the stranger beside you. No one says anything. Everyone just sits still, as if holding space for each other just enough to hurt, but not feel alone. And you suddenly understand. In this era, entertainment isn't to be happy. It's just to live a few more hours before the sadness returns tomorrow morning. Everything's calm, fire low, the singer quiet. You're feeling an almost suspicious kind of peace. Then it happens. A loud thump, unclear where from. The screech of chairs, swearing unclear if at someone or just at life. The cause. According to 3 people sitting nearby, that guy said the chicken was his. But I clearly bought that chicken for my ex before she dumped me. You don't get it, and you don't need to. Because everyone else here knows exactly what kind of story this is. A table flips. A beer jar is thrown like an unspoken vow. Someone charges with a wooden spoon like it's Seth's sacred sword. Everyone moves aside, no one interferes. Not out of fear, but because a part of everyone here has once been the one holding that spoon. Someone yells, not the face. He still owes money with that face. Another guy raises a wooden chair, then puts it down, sits on it, and sighs. Let 'em fight. Cheaper than going to a fortune teller. The tavern owner walks out. No shouting, no threats. Just taps the wooden staff thick as a tree limb gently on the floor. I don't stop you from hurting. I just stop you from spilling the stew I've been simmering since Monday. The fighters stop, panting. They sit down. One hands over a piece of bread. The other presses back a chunk of cheese, half of it slightly hairy. And you realize, here people don't fight to win. Not out of hate, not over a chicken, but because sometimes humans don't know how to cry, so they punch instead. In that smoky tavern between groans, laughs and the crackling fire, you understand something. Every punch is an unsaid sentence. Every bruise is an unhealed memory. And sometimes the tavern is the only place where people are allowed to break, then glue themselves back with a cup of old brew. No one yells here because this is the last place where identity doesn't matter. Some nights you see people arguing about old stuff, about unpaid debts, about a careless word or a misplaced look, but strangely no one yells, no table slams, no one stands up with puffed up pride, no who's right, who's wrong showdowns, just voices softening, throats rasping, eyes falling to the ground. Because here everyone knows this place has no door for ID checks. It doesn't care if you're a farmer or a priest, doesn't ask if you've got money or education, doesn't care if you slept in a palace or a pigsty. Here, if you're tired, if you're lost, if you're hungry for brew, or just for people you come in. And there's only one rule that can cost you that right. Making a noise louder than what others can bear. Everyone carries something they can't explain, a scar, a sadness, a thing lost, and everyone's just trying to keep this silence whole so nothing breaks again. You look around a man who argued about a missing chicken now sitting holding his bowl again. A girl who was wrongly blamed just nodding, tearing her bread in two, sharing it with the one who snapped. A couple saying nothing but their eyes, honest for all to see. Because this is the tavern for those with nowhere left to perform. The only place where you're allowed to be sad without explaining, to feel joy with no reason, and to lose an argument without losing dignity. You think to yourself, out there people fight to defend their pride. Here, they yield to protect the peace. Not because they are gentle, not because they're weak, but because they know this is the last place that doesn't care who you are, as long as you don't ruin it. The fire in the middle of the tavern has burned all the way down. No more crackling. Only a soft red glow, small like the faint heartbeat of a long day finally ready to rest. No one speaks anymore. No one needs to. You look around. The man who threw the jar is now slumped over the table, one hand still gripping an empty cup, as if it were the last thing keeping him from falling. The wandering singer has long gone silent. Now she leans against a wooden beam, eyes closed, still hugging the three-stringed lute that snapped its third string earlier tonight. An old man whispers, to whom no one knows. Maybe to his wife who's no longer here, or maybe to his former self, the young man still sitting somewhere in memory, and you, the newcomer, don't want to leave either. Not because you know anyone, not because the beer's good, not because the straw is warm, but because tonight, for the first time in so long, you don't have to brace yourself to be anything. Just be you, hurt enough, breathing enough, present enough. Wind slips through the walls. Someone shivers. A cloak is pulled over a sleeping shoulder. No one says anything. No thank you needed. Because here kindness doesn't need a reason. A dirty-faced boy crawls out from somewhere and curls up between two adults already drunk. They don't wake, but one arm half asleep still wraps around the child's shoulder, as if to say, sleep. No one gets taken by the night here. You feel your eyes sting, not from the smoke, but because this is what you needed for so long, and never had the name for. No one says goodbye. No one sees you out. But you know, if you come back tomorrow, there will still be a spot small waiting for you by the fire. The night slows down. The wind is no longer too cold, and in the mix of snoring and soft sighs, you hear something no one says out loud. Thank you for staying with us, even if it was just for one night. The night seemed to have ended quietly. The brew had settled, people had slumped, the fire had sunk to its final coals, and then a flute rang out. Not perfect, no pitch, but full of feeling. A young man stood bracing himself on a pillar, waving a wooden flute as long as a hollowed sugar cane, and shouted, "Everyone, tonight I'll tell the story of the god Seth and his first love with a crocodile. The play, mythology with a human breath, romance steeped in brew. The tale began with a mythological breakup. God Seth loved goddess Hathor, but she chose to drink beer with god Sobek. So Seth went mad, turned into a sandstorm, and flipped the whole valley. And Sobek just laughed and grilled fish. The crowd burst into laughter. Someone clapped. An old woman whispered, 'Love, huh? We've all been someone's Seth at some point.' Nearby, the wandering singer plucked her last remaining string. Once you said you'd wait for the harvest, now you wait for someone else on the Nile full of dead fish. No one knew if it was a real song or made up on the spot. But everyone listened, not for the lyrics, but because her voice felt like it was speaking for someone who no longer had one. And of course, drama in artist mode. Another drunk man stood up suddenly, lies it was Ra who invented love. Another threw a cup of brew. Ra only invented heat and evaporated feelings. The two stepped forward. Everyone held their breath. The tavern keeper tapped his staff. Anyone still debating gods will be washing dishes for the god of porridge. The whole tavern erupted with laughter. No one fought, because here drama was allowed as long as it didn't spill the soup. And you, the newcomer, laugh for the first time, not the happy kind, but the kind of laugh that means you're alive with real people. People who've been jealous, been in love, told mythology wrong just to have someone listen. And in the flickering light of a stage with no curtains, you realize we don't sing because our voices are good. We sing because if we don't, we'll fall so silent no one will know we're still alive. You thought things had quieted. People had lain down. The fire had shrunk. Your breath slowed, sleep creeping in. And then someone tapped a wooden spoon against a jug. A small clink. Enough to make everyone still awake look up. A young man with messy hair, eyes still red from earlier stood. He cleared his throat like an actor about to perform in an epic. He wrote himself, then yelled, "Tonight I shall tell the love triangle of Osiris Isis, and a fire eel with better memory than man." No one laughed. No one objected. Because here, anyone brave enough to stand and tell a story is respected like the one who keeps the fire. The storyteller swept his hand like a director. Osiris loved Isis with all his heart, and a staff longer than both of Horus's arms combined. But then Sobek, the crocodile god, invited her for a drink and never paid her back. The whole tavern cracked up. Laughter came in all forms, raspy dry like wind through beer-scorched throats. An old woman murmured, "Yeah, women have always liked crocodiles with ponds." The singer, still seated by the wooden post, gently raised her hand to the two remaining strings of her instrument. She didn't sing loudly, just enough for you to lean in, and your heartbeat slowed to match her pitch. If life is a shattered jar, I'll take the last of the brew so the night won't spill back on me. You didn't know who she meant. Maybe a former lover. Maybe her father. Maybe herself on those nights she sang to rooms with no one listening. A man suddenly stood. I object Horus would never share his love with reptiles. Another raised an eyebrow. Better than Seth, sharing memories with pain. A third shouted, "Shut up, even gods need personal space." Everyone paused. You thought there'd be a brawl, thought someone would get hit with a jug. But then the tavern keeper, with his wooden staff, and the face of someone who's seen the end times and still made stew, said calmly, "Anyone who spills the chicken broth while debating gods sleeps outside tomorrow night." Laughter filled the room. People sat down. Someone stood just to add more firewood. A child told a dream about riding an elephant to propose to the sun god. An old woman tapped along with a spoon off beat but honest. Someone sang the wrong lyrics, but the whole tavern sang along with the mistake. Someone drew on the wall with beer-wet fingers a cat sipping brew with God Ra. The crowd applauded, not because it was beautiful, but because it made someone laugh from the heart. You looked around, no professionals, no one trying to stand out, just people each allowed in that moment to truly live as themselves. A small piece, a verse, a joke, a glance, and the unspoken message, I'm not the only one trying not to fall apart. You feel something strange, in a place with no stage, no lights, no props. There were performances that made me believe in people more than ever. The fire was almost out. No one added more wood. No one said, let's go to sleep. It just started happening. People began lying down, as if their souls already knew. It's time to slow down. Nothing more is needed except one another. You see the old straw mat stained with brew soaked with wine frayed at the edges. Some are cloaks folded in two. Some are sacks stuffed with rice husks. Nothing looks like a bed, but no one is left out. People lie close, shoulder to back, resting heads on arms or on the bottom of an upturned jug. Someone dozed off on their bowl. The person beside them tilted it just enough so it wouldn't spill on their face. Not because the room is sealed, not because the walls are thick, just because there are so many people even the wind hesitates to push in. Everyone shifts slightly to make room for the person next to them. No one pulls away. No one fights for a blanket because no one has one. Only warmth passed from one shoulder to another, from back to back, without a single word. You hear breathing uneven but real. Someone talks in their sleep. The person beside lifts a hand to their forehead, no questions, still asleep. A child crawls in between two adult bodies, and no one asks whose child it is. Only an arm wraps around him as if it's done that many times before. Someone cries, softly. No one consoles, but the shared breathing slows gently as if to let that person know they're not alone. You lie there among them and realize this isn't a place to sleep. This is a kind of temporary peace, just enough for people to survive the world one more day. You don't know who's who. No names, no ages, no jobs, no backstories. But you know you haven't been left behind. In that night, no one calls your name. No one prays out loud. No one repeats, it'll be okay. No lullabies. Just the crackling of fading coals, the quiet breaths, the sound of straw brushing against skin, and the presence silent but full of people, still alive. You open your eyes, look up at the thatched roof with a few holes. Moonlight shines through, landing on the face beside you. You don't know who they are, but you see it clearly. They've known pain too. And still, They sleep as if life never squeezed the air out of their lungs. You smile, not because you're happy, just because, finally, you found a place to lie down among imperfect people who know how to stay still without letting you fall apart. You lie there, among steady breaths, among the dying fire, among moonlight falling through holes in the thatched roof, spilling onto clay-stained floors and unnamed memories. No one says anything now. No one needs to. The room, once a tavern, is now just a giant nest, a place where scratched-up souls are allowed to rest. Not to heal, not to dream sweet dreams, but simply to stop bracing against loneliness. You hear the heartbeat of the person next to you, unsure if it's theirs or if it's already merged with yours. You hear the night wind breathing through the mud walls, soft as a whisper. Sleep. Everything out there can wait for morning. No one comforts you. No one tells you you're okay. But everyone still lies here together. And maybe that's all you really needed. A room that doesn't ask who you are. A sleep that doesn't need to be pretty. A moment where your exhaustion isn't a flaw. So if you're still awake, let me know in the comments. If your heart still feels heavy. If you still can't sleep, still can't forgive, still can't forget. That's okay too. You don't have to do any of it alone. Lie down. Breathe out slowly, like the ones around you now. Not perfect, but also just trying to survive one more day. Sleep deeply. You don't need magical dreams. Just a night that isn't too cold. And a morning that isn't too rushed. Because tonight, you're no longer alone. You found your way back to the tavern where the small fire still burns, where everyone's been broken and still gotta sit close together. You sit up, not like in action movies, more like one hand down trembling, pausing halfway, exhaling, then lifting half your back. The whole tavern moves the same way. No one springs up like a creative hero of the morning. Just the sound of straw rustling, someone mumbling, still alive. And the bubbling sound of porridge boiling like a stomach starting to remember its responsibilities. The tavern keeper hair like a bird's nest, eyes like he just lived another lifetime. Steps out of the kitchen holding a wooden ladle, tapping gently on the rim of the pot. Get up and eat. The porridge didn't burn today. Weird, huh? A few soft grunts echo around the room. Not because they're not hungry, but because everyone's afraid that if they laugh too loud, their insides might melt. You walk toward the pot, maybe out of hunger, maybe curiosity. You line up. Behind an old woman, wearing a patchwork cloak, made from 3 fabrics of 3 different centuries. In front of a broad-backed man, big as a chopping board, politely asking for an extra pinch of fried shallots. The porridge is still thick enough to hold a wooden spoon upright without falling over. Its colour, a dull grey like a sky about to snow, but not quite sad enough yet. You take a sip. The first taste is indescribable. The second, it has a hint of ash and a whiff of homesickness. The third, it's that feeling, fine, eat it. Keep going. Don't ask questions. Someone says loudly, not bad today. I didn't find any of my teeth in it. That's a win. Another replies, shut up. I'm still chewing something that feels like a shoe sole. Someone bursts out laughing. Someone's still asleep over an empty jug. Someone's wrapping leftover bread in their own sleeve to take home. And just like that, breakfast begins. No one invites anyone. No one asks, is this seat taken? People just sit down, scoot over a bit, and hot bowls are passed around like a morning ritual with no priest. You eat, slowly, sometimes looking up and realizing you're not a stranger anymore. A young guy sits across from you, hair a mess, beard, not quite enough to be called respectable. He looks at you, smirks. Last night I puked up a poem. Don't remember a word. But I swear it was brilliant. You nod. No questions. Because sometimes the best stories are the ones people tell after they've forgotten them. In the corner, the old woman is handing out rope to the tavern kids. No one knows why. Maybe to play. Maybe to tie something back together inside themselves. Someone's washing dishes with sand humming the porridge of time. Someone else is quietly writing on the wall with porridge-wet fingers. A crooked heart, a three-legged cow, a thank you. No one knows who it's for. You think this morning no one's in a rush. No one talks about tomorrow. No one asks what's next. Just a group of people tired enough to stop pretending sitting down to eat, like it's the last decent thing humanity still remembers how to do. A farewell with no send-off. No one announces that morning is over. No bells, no horns, no street calls of business hours now open. Just one person folding their cloak, another smoothing their hair with water from the wash jug, then standing up slowly. The young man who once got drunk, once sang, once threw a jug. He's the first to step out the door. No goodbye. Just turns his head slightly, just enough to meet your eyes, and nods. Not a nod that means farewell, but one that says, I made it through. You will too. The wandering singer stands up too. Her instrument still has two strings, but she doesn't play, just holds it like she's holding every night she sang to a silent room. She walks past you whispering, if I can still sing tomorrow, I'll come back. You don't answer, just shift slightly so she can pass, because you understand that promise is just another way of saying I'm still breathing. In the corner, the old storyteller is tying his straw sandals with grass rope. His hands shake, but his eyes still shine. He walks out carrying a handful of cold ash from the hearth. No one asks why. Maybe he'll sprinkle it on a garden. Maybe to keep the tavern's warmth in a small pouch. Or maybe that ash was once warmed by his memories, and he can't bear to leave it behind. A child chases a cat to the doorway, carries nothing, just waves randomly back inside as if saying goodbye to everyone and no one. You still sit there, not sure who you're waiting for. Or maybe you just aren't ready for your sandals to scrape against the ground outside a ground that is cold and has no one sitting beside you. The tavern empties slowly. Just a few elders left nibbling at cold bread or nodding off like they're stealing a few more seconds of spiritual survival. An old woman hands you a wooden spoon. Keep it. Out there no one's going to scoop the porridge for you. You smile, not wide, but real. Someone taps the side of a jug, not to call anyone, just out of habit, like tapping the past, gently reminding it not to fall asleep. You stand up, slowly, because no one's rushing you, and you realize you're not carrying anything except the scent of hearth ash in your hair and a few stories that never got to end. You glance back at the room, the place that was once a tavern, once a nest, once a space where silence didn't mean you had to leave. Now it returns to what it was, a few uneven mats, an empty pot of porridge, and sunlight sliding across the clay jars like the trace of spirits that just passed through. You gently touch the old fabric curtain, the door that once welcomed you into a night where no one asked who you were. It's still light, still swaying, still breathing with the wind of those who just learned how to be tired. You pull the curtain, step outside, no goodbye, no farewell. But you know, if tonight you break again out there in the world, that curtain will still open, where the outside world doesn't serve porridge and certainly not kindness for free. You've just stepped out of the tavern. The sun hits your face, a cold kind of sun, not because of the weather, but because out here there's no straw fire burning alongside your feelings. No one's tucking in the people who fall asleep. No more off-key songs that made you tear up. No warm gaze that simply said, I don't know who you are, but I get that you're tired. Just dirt roads, a few distant shouts from the market, and the smell of cooled sheep fat clinging to your cloak no longer sweet like it was last night. You walk, feet sinking into dry sand, still holding the wooden spoon the old woman gave you. A small object yet in this world, the only emotional weapon you've got left. A guy hauling vegetables passes no greeting, no smile. A fish vendor yells buy or scram. A kid bumps into your shoulder, then vanishes like a breeze on a deadline. You look around. Everyone's busy. Everyone's fast. Everyone wears a mask, made of tone. And then behind you, someone asks, Hey, you slept at the tavern, huh? You don't reply, because you know they're not asking to care. They're asking to be sure. You're not like them. You smile slightly, not sad, just, so that's how the real world still is. Out here, people don't tell stories to survive, they tell them to sell. Don't raise glasses to share, they do it for the photo. Don't sit beside each other because they need to, just because the next table's full. You see it clearly, this world still runs fine. But it's not built for someone who just learned how to breathe slower. You stop at a corner, sit on the steps, not because your legs are tired, but because your heart hasn't caught up to the cold pace out here. The wooden spoon still rests in your hand. You turn it slowly, like trying to keep yourself from dissolving into the spin. You think I'll go back, not because the porridge was great, but because there I didn't have to be okay to sit down. Someone walking by glances at you. That look of, that guy probably doesn't have a job. You nod to yourself. Yeah, I'm emotionally unemployed right now. And you sit a little longer, not hoping someone asks, not hoping someone notices, just because you've just left a place that didn't require you to be brilliant, beautiful, or wise. Just quiet enough to not overwhelm someone else's pain. Now you brace yourself again, tighten your belt, straighten your face. Say good morning without sounding too hollow, because out here no one serves porridge, and kindness isn't handed out for free. You walk, feet sinking into dry sand, still holding the wooden spoon the old woman gave you. A small object, yet in this world, the only emotional weapon you've got left. And then you see it, society. Not the cozy kind like last night, but a marketplace of performances where everyone has to be fine even if they're empty inside. A vendors arguing over wilted greens, yelling, weighing, stomping to the beat of her deadline. A sharply dressed man pushes you aside, no eye contact, no apology, because you're not wearing his brand. A group huddled at a tea stall laughing loud, but eyes dart like price scanners measuring worth by reaction speed. You pass a beggar child. Someone tosses him a coin, then turns away before they have to see the grateful eyes. Because here, kindness only counts if it lasts under 3 seconds. You try to sit on a doorstep, The person next to you instantly gets up, glancing as if you brought some kind of virus, called breakdown. Out here, no one has time for your silence. You have to explain why you're sad, justify why you're not smiling, prove you're still valuable even when you just want to sit and let the weight ease. Someone says as you sigh, "Hey, tired or not, we've all got stuff to do." You don't blame them. You just don't want to be them. And you miss it. Not the watery porridge, not the rock-hard bread. You miss the way a single look could understand your pain. Without asking what's wrong, you glance back toward the alley leading to the tavern. Still narrow, still old, still no signboard, still the only place that never asks you to smile when you can't. And then you see law, not justice-driven law, but ancient rules not made to protect but to remind you don't disrupt others' exhaustion. A guard blocks a beggar mid-market growling new rule. No saying you're hungry after midday. Wanna be poor, get it certified by the village chief. A town official sits under a tree holding a signboard reading, "Complain about the weather" more than 3 times, and you'll be charged under Article 4B, weakening community morale. A woman dragged into the street for saying the wrong god's name while selling incense. She called God Sobek a crocodile in a dress. Now she's writing 100 times. Sobek is a powerful male deity, unrelated to fashion choices or accessories. You hear a wooden speaker, a grandpa shouting into a bamboo megaphone emergency bulletin. Anyone stepping on someone's shadow without apologizing will lose a community porridge meal. And at the market gate, a stern warning hangs. No public sadness during business hours. All depression must be registered 3 days in advance. You exhale, softly and bitterly, not out of fear of punishment, but because you know these absurd rules get followed simply because no one has the strength to resist them anymore. Out here, you're banned from sitting unless you're smiling. Banned from storytelling unless it's certified uplifting. And banned from crying unless your tears are constructively framed. You sigh, a tiny breath, still enough to earn a side glance. Because out here, breathing wrong might get you scheduled for emotional realignment. You don't blame them. You just don't want to be them. And you miss it. Not the porridge, not the bread. You miss the feeling of sitting among people just as tattered as you, and no one pretending to be whole. You look back down the alley to the tavern. Still narrow, still old. Still no signs. Still the only place that doesn't ask for a mental passport before letting you be sad. You came back not because you missed the brew, but because you missed the feeling of no one asking. What time are you leaving? No one told you to return. No one sent a letter. No flute called your spirit. No one said there's porridge tonight. It's just that after a very long day you found your feet walking back there, to that slanted corner where the straw pile was never cleaned up, to the house with no sign where voices and silence lay side by side after sundown. You turn into the old alley, past fresh straw, past the smell of cow dung no longer warm, and you see the cloth curtain still hanging. It doesn't welcome you. It doesn't reject you either. It just sways like someone nodding softly from a shared memory. You step inside. No one notices you. The people from last night are gone. The drunk man is gone. The wandering singer is gone. The old storyteller too. But the tavern is still exactly the same. Still damp. Still lit by a fire low and flickering like the heart of someone who just stepped back from giving up. And there are still a few straw mats inviting you to sit by simply, not asking anything. You pick a different corner, not the old spot. Someone else is there. They look tired too, like you, maybe more than you. A girl holds her bowl of porridge with both hands like she's cradling a feverish cat. A man with a cloth bag, torn shoes, eyes staring into 3 lifetimes at once. A boy asleep beside a water jar, still gripping a stone in his hand. And you're just tonight's newcomer. You sit. No one asks where you came from. Just someone turning the jug slightly towards you in a way just careless enough to say, "You count as here." You nod. No one nods back, but you see their shoulders ease. Someone coughs softly. No one flinches, because coughing here is background noise. Like the wind, like the brew, like exhaustion being poured out in slow sips. You lean your shoulder on a wooden beam. Listen to the fire crackle as if it's telling stories in a language only the sleepless understand. No one knows you, but no one finds you strange, because in this tavern every night is a new performance. The actors change, the script repeats, the feelings stay real. Someone near you, stocky, build back wide like aged lumber, turns and says, "Every night someone comes back." No one looks the same, but everyone's face looks a little cracked. You laugh, not loudly, because here even laughter makes space for silence. He hands you a piece of bread harder than cobblestone. You take it, not because you're hungry, but because here accepting bread means, "Mind if I sit with you?" You ask softly, "Do people ever come back more than once?" He replies, "Of course. Some visit a dozen taverns, but only one place ever lets them really sit down." You look around. No one talks much. No wandering songs. No mythologies. Just one sigh in the corner, light as a leaf, falling onto an old puddle. And you see it clearly, even if tonight is a different night. Even if the table is a different table. Even if the people are different. The tiredness is still the same. The need to sit still shared. And the fire, though dimmer, is still bright enough for you to see your heart hasn't gone out. No one said goodbye, but you know you've just lived through something real. You don't remember how long you sat. Don't remember what you said, how much you ate, or how many times you laughed. Just remember, the fire in front of you used to burn brighter, and now it's fading. No one stood up with resolve. No one patted your shoulder and said, "That's enough." No music to mark the end. No final bell. Just everything began to go quiet. Quiet like a final song. That doesn't need a closing note. Someone stood, gently folded the straw mat beneath them. Another nodded toward the fireplace as if saying goodbye to a friend who'd kept watch all night. You remained still, not because you were clinging to anything, but because this time there was no need to rush. An old man placed his empty bowl aside, then brushed off his hands like he'd just finished something, unseen but deeply known to him. An old woman adjusted the sleeve of the person beside her, someone who had dozed off at some point, lips still moving slightly, with a thought that never turned into words. No one walked you out. No one looked you in the eye to say safe travels, but you still fell. You'd been quietly told goodbye in a language the outside world no longer remembers how to speak. You stood, slowly, your back still sore, your legs still heavy, your heart still full. But some part of you had been gently set down. You walked toward the curtain. This time, you didn't pull it quickly. You just stood there looking back at the room that never asked where anyone came from, never cared what was in your pockets, only ever asked one thing. Today, have you been tired enough to need a place to sit? And if the answer was yes, then this place always had a seat, even if small, even if old, even if next to a pile of ash. You lift the curtain. Moonlight falls on your shoulders like a thin shawl. The breeze runs through your hair. This time it's not cold. You don't look back. You don't need to. Because you know if one day your heart sinks again, the tavern will still be there. No signboard, no calling voice, just the fire, a nameless bowl of porridge and people who've been broken too, but are still breathing. You walk away, not fast, not sure where you're going, but your steps are lighter, and somewhere deep inside, you smile, not because everything's okay, but because you no longer have to be okay alone. Dim the lights, turn on a fan, and picture this. You're standing in ancient Egypt. In front of you, the Nile winds like a silk ribbon of coolness through the desert. There are camels, pyramids, a sun hot enough to toast your scalp. And at the center of it all is a powerful queen, her name Cleopatra. And no, she wasn't from this land. She was Greek, more precisely Macedonian descendant of the guys who once conquered the world, and then tripped and left behind an empire messier than an all-you-can-eat buffet with no cleanup crew. Cleopatra, the deluxe version of Alexander the Great. It all started when Alexander the Great, the curly-haired wild child of Macedonia, decided to travel the world by conquering it. When he died from reasons unclear, fever, wine content not suitable for broadcast, his empire got sliced up like a poorly cut pizza. One of his most loyal generals, Ptolemy III, Soter, raised his hand and said, "I'll take Egypt." And thus, in 305 BCE, the Ptolemaic dynasty was born Greeks ruling Egypt, while eating Greek cheese, speaking Greek, writing in Greek, and not bothering to learn Egyptian for 300 years. In short, Egypt had a king, but an imported one. And the locals, they just kept living their lives, only now they paid taxes to toga-wearing strangers. And then Cleopatra was born, the last of the Greek bloodline, the start of the political drama. Cleopatra 7. Philopator was born in 69 BCE in the glamorous city of Alexandria, a city named by Alexander himself, who basically slapped his name on every place he visited. Alexandria, Egypt, Alexandria, Syria, Alexandria. Next to Alexandria, from a young age, Cleopatra studied languages, philosophy, mathematics, politics, and survival in a family with one golden tradition, killing each other for the throne. The Ptolemy family had a thing for intra-family marriage, meaning if you're Cleopatra and you have a brother, guess what, you marry him. Not because you want to, but because tradition said Greek blood must not be diluted. And spoiler alert, they still killed each other anyway. Every breakfast was basically a board meeting crossed with who will make it to noon. Cleopatra, the only one in 300 years who bothered to learn Egyptian, in a family that worshipped Greek gods, wrote Greek poetry and wept in Greek grammar. Cleopatra did what no one else did. She learned Egyptian. Not just learned, she mastered it. And so to the people, Cleopatra wasn't just some foreign noblewoman sitting on our throne. She became the embodiment of the goddess Isis, a true ruler, someone who understood the people's language and their fears. She wore Egyptian clothing, appeared in Egyptian rituals, and called herself the living goddess, a PR strategy that worked brilliantly without needing a single hashtag. So, was Cleopatra Egyptian at heart maybe? She wasn't born of the desert, but she dissolved into it like sand in the wind. Cleopatra wasn't a native, but she convinced the world she was born of this land, belonged to it, and would die for it. And that was something no foreign ruler before her had ever done. Before you picture Cleopatra as a woman lounging on a golden beanbag, pouring wine into Caesar's mouth and whispering, "I'm bored. Let me reset that image for you." Cleopatra was not the ancient Marilyn Monroe. She was Elon Musk, plus Margaret Thatcher, plus a TikTok war strategist wrapped up in the form of a woman who spoke 9 languages, had her own army, and never backed away from political scandal. She spoke at least 7, maybe 9 languages, while medieval European princes were still learning how to spell their own names. Cleopatra was speaking Greek, Egyptian, Latin, Hebrew, Syriac, Ethiopian, and possibly Parthian. She could talk to merchants, monks, scholars, and enemies without a translator. Imagine you're running an ancient world summit. Who's hosting, translating, and throwing in a dramatic pause in both royal and street dialects? Cleopatra me. Politics was a game, and she was the one writing the rules. If you think Cleopatra got her crown because she was pretty or on trend, you're mistaken. She became queen at 18, in a kingdom buried in debt, threatened by Rome, stabbed in the back by internal uprisings, and married off to her own little brother, who was 10 years old. She was deposed, exiled from Alexandria, returned with her own army, and snuck into the palace to meet Julius Caesar, wrapped in a carpet. Yes, legend has it, she was delivered to Caesar's room, rolled inside a rug, like Cleopatra stuffed pizza. Caesar unrolled it, and voila, queen. That wasn't seduction. That was political theatre cosplay level diplomacy with national level risk. She allied with Caesar not just for love. After that dramatic entrance, Cleopatra had a child with Caesar named Caesarion, aka Little Caesar, got her throne back, reorganized Egypt's finances, stabilized grain prices, put down civil unrest, rebuilt temples and managed food supplies. While Caesar went back to Rome to build an empire, Cleopatra stayed behind as CEO of crisis management. Was it love, strategy, both? But the result, she survived Egypt, survived Caesar, survived at least for a while. And after Caesar's death, she partnered with Mark Antony. The world fell apart when Caesar was assassinated. Once again, Cleopatra played high-stakes political chess with Rome, reforged alliances with Mark Antony's faction, and had another child. This wasn't loving, powerful men. This was reproductive strategy as political alliance. Each child was a flag planted on the map of power. Cleopatra didn't have the biggest army, but she gave birth to people who could rule half the Mediterranean, if things hadn't later gone straight to hell. Most importantly, she controlled her image like a PR master. She didn't let others write her story. She hired poets, sculptors, playwrights to depict her as the goddess Isis. She built temples, carved statues, minted coins with her face. She knew before others name you, define yourself first. And even though Rome, her enemy, rewrote history to say she was a sorceress who seduced men with eyeliner, the truth lies somewhere in the ashes of time. Cleopatra didn't rule through beauty. She ruled with intellect wrapped in beauty, so people would underestimate her right before they fell. This isn't just a story of a woman and a snake. This was an empire's final goodbye, done with eyeliner silver coins bearing her face, and a message no one dared say aloud. I'd rather die with power than live in disgrace. It began with the fall of Mark Antony, her final love and final alliance. We've told Caesar's story. Caesar died. Cleopatra didn't collapse, she pivoted. Mark Antony, the decorated general, charming and a bit impulsive, became her strategic partner, and new lover. They had 3 children. They redrew the Mediterranean map, aiming to split it half and half. They even held a wedding of the gods in Alexandria, calling themselves Dionysus and Isis. Meanwhile, Rome was losing its mind, because back in Rome, Octavian Caesar's adopted son hated that Antony had fallen for an Eastern witch. And so began the first real propaganda war in history, Cleopatra versus Octavian. Octavian struck first. Cleopatra is a snake. Antony is a traitor. He didn't declare war on Antony. He declared war on Cleopatra and painted her as an Egyptian witch, a seductress who lured men with lust, an Eastern threat in need of civilizing. Octavian Rome didn't lose Antony. Rome lost a general to an Egyptian woman's dress. Roman media, with media and political power. Octavian turned a queen into the symbol of everything decadent. The Battle of Actium, the collapse of an alliance. In 31 BCE, it all crumbled. Cleopatra and Antony's fleet was annihilated at the naval battle of Actium. Antony retreated to Egypt. Cleopatra followed, carrying what was left of their dream. And when Octavian approached Alexandria, they both knew there was no escape. Then Mark Antony died in the most Shakespearean way possible. Mark Antony heard Cleopatra was dead. Fake news. He stabbed himself. Didn't die instantly. Lay bleeding. Was brought to Cleopatra. Legend says lifted through a window in a cloth because she was hiding in her tomb, afraid of being captured alive. They saw each other. One last time. Antony died in Cleopatra's arms. Alexandria fell silent, and Rome was at the gates. And then, the symbolic death snake or not, the story recorded by Roman historians who hated her, she killed herself using a venomous snake asp, hidden in a basket of fruit. It bit her chest or arm, depending on the translation, and she died peacefully, gracefully, like a goddess returning to the earth. But modern historians doubt that. Poisonous snakes don't kill that fast. No snake was ever found. Cleopatra had studied poisons. She might have used her own custom mixture. Or maybe she was forced. Octavian didn't want to parade her through Rome alive, too dangerous. A living Cleopatra was a symbol of resistance, a media bomb. So, either he ordered it or let her do the one thing she still had the power to do, choose her ending. And so it ended. Egypt's empire fell. Cleopatra disappeared. But the legend began. Cleopatra died. Her child was killed. Egypt became a Roman province. Octavian renamed himself Augustus, becoming Rome's first emperor. But he couldn't kill the legend. Cleopatra became a symbol. Not of the venomous queen, but of the last woman to raise her head between 2 empires of men and choose freedom even in death. If I can't rule, then I won't be ruled like a trophy. That's the spirit of Cleopatra. And even if we'll never know if she died by snake, by poison, or by despair, we know one thing for sure: she never bowed her head. Do you think Cleopatra is remembered as a political genius? No. After her death, Roman historians, especially those on Octavian's side, rewrote her entire image as a historical side dish next to great men, from queen to drama queen, courtesy of Rome. What they wrote: she seduced Caesar, ensnared Antony with sex and sorcery. She was Eastern venom, eyes sharp like a serpent, lips soft like strategy. They turned a multilingual strategist, a leader of Egypt in crisis, into a seductive shadow beside powerful men. Mainstream history recorded her as the woman who brought down 2 empires, not the woman who fought for her nation's independence for 20 years before being swallowed whole. But then, Centuries later, the world wanted her back in strange ways. Shakespeare wrote Antony and Cleopatra as a love tragedy, turning her into an Egyptian Juliet. Hollywood, Elizabeth Taylor in Cleopatra, 1963. Smoky eyes, gold gowns, walking like thunder through palaces. Pop culture, Nicki Minaj, Katy Perry, Beyoncé. All borrowed the Cleopatra vibe in music videos, queen icon, fierce and flawless. Instagram-era Cleopatra became a meme. A quote, a girl boss symbol. Like Cleopatra didn't need a king. She was one. Even though, in real life, she married at least 2 of her own brothers. Many historians argue turning Cleopatra into a sexy icon erases her political achievements. But on the other hand, if you're still talked about 2,000 years later through graffiti hoodies, memes, did anyone really erase you? Cleopatra's death didn't end the legend. It just launched an era where everyone wants to play her. And honestly, she never needed us to remember her accurately, just powerfully. If Cleopatra could see what the world's done with her name, from plays to cosplay to perfume ads, she might just shrug and say, as long as they keep saying my name, I've never left the throne. She wasn't the last one to rule Egypt. She was the last one who dared say no to Rome. She wasn't just a pretty Egyptian girl. She was a Macedonian who spoke Egyptian to protect someone else's land. And she didn't use men to survive. She used men as pieces on a rigged chessboard. A lullaby before the end. When you close your eyes tonight, if you dream of Cleopatra, don't picture her kissing someone on a palace balcony. Picture her sitting alone before a bronze mirror, drawing eyeliner with charcoal, preparing to command a naval war, and whispering to you, history will call me many names, but only I get to choose the ending. You're not a queen. You don't have a throne. You don't have a voice in history. You're just a female slave in the palace of Alexandria, living under the shadow of the most famous woman on the planet, Cleopatra. You sleep on a palm fiber mat near a cold stone wall, squeezed between 6 others in a windowless room, with only the wind from the Mediterranean and the breathing of worn-out lives. Before sunrise, you're already awake. Not because someone wakes you, but because your body has learned to sound its own alarm, get up, or get beaten with a broomstick handle. You bend down to wash your face with diluted ash water, not to be clean, but to look less tired. Cleopatra's palace does not forgive an ungraceful appearance, even for someone who scrubs the hallways. The first illness of the day, scrubbing marble floors with your back. You and your group go down to the East Wing, where Cleopatra might pass through for ritual. The floors must shine like gold. You kneel, dip a wool cloth in vinegar, and scrub each stone tile with both hands. No stains allowed. No speaking. No one looks at you. No one calls your name. You could live here for 12 years, but on the staff list, you're just cleaning woman, number 47. Thin hands, quiet, easy to command. Around the second hour of the day, you're summoned to the dressing room. Not to dress, but to pass garments to the higher-ranking royal handmaids. They hold each perfume bottle like lifting a soul, and you must memorize the position of every jar, every pigment, every mascara brush made from polished horsebone. You're not allowed to try, not allowed to touch, but you must know exactly which is for summer lips, which one hides the queen's under-eye circles when Antony hasn't written. Don't be mistaken. Royal tears still fall, but the one wiping them is you, with the hem of your sleeve. Some days she calls you over not because you're special, but because you have small arms. She hands you a vial, and you hand it to the little mouse in the cage. You watch it twitch in silence. You don't ask. You're not allowed to ask. You used to think Cleopatra was cruel. But when you saw her sitting alone, hands still trembling after checking the results, you understood she was preparing for the end, and you were witnessing a preparation no one else would ever know. Around the 6th hour, if there's no festival or diplomatic guest, low-ranking slaves get to eat. A piece of bread made from grain mixed with grit, hard as limestone. A bowl of watered-down grape juice, smelling like forgotten vinegar. You eat fast, not allowed to chew loudly. You may not tell stories, may not laugh, may not drop crumbs on the floor. You swallow like you're stealing your own meal. By day's end, you're assigned to clean a small temple in the palace courtyard, where Cleopatra performs weekly rituals. You don't believe in the gods much, but in that cold stone room with half-burned incense and candlelight, flickering like souls, you believe in silence. Every time you wipe the altar of Isis with a linen cloth soaked in rose vinegar, you whisper to yourself, just finish before dark. Just don't get yelled at. Just survive one more day. That is your prayer. Not a prayer for freedom. A prayer to keep your body intact until tomorrow. You return to the room from the morning. The sun has set. Alexandria outside still buzzes, but inside you there's only the ache of your back, the chill in your legs, and blood-stained fingers from scrubbing hearth soot. You don't remember home. There's no time to remember. You don't ask, who is Cleopatra? Or why am I here? You only know tomorrow morning you might be called to polish the statue of a god or to wrap a carpet for a queen. But you touched the floor Cleopatra walked on. You dusted beneath the throne of an empire. And sometimes, in the most back-breaking moment, you wonder, did she see will someone far, far in the future remember that I was here, that I once lived? As a shadow behind Power Alexandria, the pearl city of the Mediterranean, where oil lamps in the royal library once glowed like stars upon the earth, where people once believed knowledge could hold back death. And now, on the night before Rome arrives, everyone is pretending nothing's happening. Inside the palace, the queen doesn't sleep, and no one dares ask why you still, that same female slave, are ordered to bring a carpet to the northern chamber. Not to clean, but to roll it up. No one says anything, but you know. Each time a carpet is rolled, a room ceases to exist. You see Cleopatra still sitting there in her white robe with gold trim, no crown hair undone. In front of her is a low table covered in maps letters and a small ebony box where she keeps the test vials. She doesn't look at you, but you know she's calculating. Not for victory, but for the least humiliating retreat. Beyond the palace, the city gates are still open, but every heart is shut. The Alexandria night market still runs. The smell of dried fish, olive oil, and old wine still thick as ever. People still laugh, still roll dice in tavern corners. A child still slips through the alleys selling sesame cakes late to sailors. But you notice wooden doors are bolted tighter. Candles are lit low, never near the windows, and no one mentions Rome. As if by not speaking disaster's name it won't find its way here. The hooves of the invaders haven't arrived, but they're already present in every dream. That night, Alexandria is unusually quiet. No fights, no drunks, no filthy jokes by the port. You, after finishing your shift, sit under a palm tree looking toward the sea. Far off you see faint red dots on the water, like fallen stars. That's the Roman fleet, someone whispers. No, Probably fishermen and other forces a laugh. But inside everyone's belly a fear is already forming unnamed. Cleopatra writes something in the empty room, and for the first time you hear her cry. You're called back very late. She requests rose oil and a bronze mirror. She writes something on papyrus with thin, sharp strokes like her own essence. No one is allowed to read, and as you back away, you hear a sound that isn't a command, isn't authority, isn't the voice of a ruler. It's a short, sob-dry split in half. It's the first and only time you hear Cleopatra cry. And you know, tomorrow there will be nothing left. You don't know who will survive. You don't know what Cleopatra will do. But when you return to the sleeping room, slip off your sandals and lie on your side in the dark, you can't sleep. Alexandria doesn't sleep. The sea doesn't sleep. Rome is approaching a heavy shadow named destiny. And in that moment, Alexandria still burns its lamps as if tomorrow still holds a court. The most beautiful city of the ancient world won't fall to thunder. It will fall to the silent agreement of those who know they're about to vanish, but want to look beautiful as they dissolve into legend. You wake up, not because someone calls, but because the city has changed its sound. No more seabirds, no familiar street vendors, just silence mixed with a kind of wind that feels foreign, the wind of those who do not belong here. No one cooks breakfast, and you understand. Today is not an ordinary day. You dress, not in your servant's uniform, just a piece of rough cloth tied quickly enough to cover your body. You don't know where to go, what to do. The old supervisor is gone. No one from your sleeping floor says a word. A fellow handmaid leans close, whispering. The queen is no more. No one cries. No one is surprised. They just know. And they carry on, as if today is simply a day with fewer market customers than usual. The palace gates open, but the guards are different. You edge down the corridor. The walls still hang the symbol of the goddess Isis. The columns still bear the fingerprints of someone who wiped them last night. But the guards are no longer in Egyptian armor. They speak Latin. They don't look at you. They don't know or care who you are. Someone is pushed out. Maybe a former scribe. Maybe a sculptor. Maybe someone who once touched Cleopatra's hand. You could be next. But you're not afraid, because what needed to be lost was lost before dawn. No one records your name, and you don't expect them to. When Rome steps into the library of Alexandria, into the palace treasury, into the room where Cleopatra died only hours ago, what are they looking for? They look for inventory lists. They look for last will's maps gold. They look for Cleopatra. But she's gone. And you stand at the back door in the shade, watching it all unfold like a dream no one will write down. No one asks you, are you all right? No one says you once polished pearls for the queen. No one carves your name into stone. And that makes you freer than anyone. When history turns a page, some are remembered, others are released. Cleopatra chose the death of a goddess. And you chose the life of the nameless. You have no throne, no bronze statue, no epic play, but you witness the last living pieces of an empire. A pair of eyes flaring one last time in the dark, an unfinished map, a nameless cry, and the silence of a room with no queen left. And if someone asks, what did you do in Cleopatra's court? You will smile, like that final night in Alexandria. I was there. I survived. I remembered. No one else needs to know. Imagine this: you are a child. No one asks what you want to be when you grow up. Because from the moment you cry, your first breath, history already has a script written for you. This is Caesarion, son of Cleopatra, and possibly the biological son of Julius Caesar. Childhood born in a palace, but not a fairy tale. You grow up in Alexandria in a crib inlaid with gold, but outside is a world filled with the fangs of international politics. They call you Ptolemy. Your official title, King of Two Cultures, a hybrid of Greece and Rome. Little Pharaoh Egypt's next symbol, and behind your back they whisper, that child is Caesar's. If so, he's a threat to the Roman throne. You don't understand this when you're small, but you see, your mother never sleeps a full night. Maps are always open on the dining table, and every good night kiss carries a scent of foresight. No toys, only books, weapons, and languages. You are taught by the finest scholars of Alexandria. Greek, Egyptian, Latin. You speak all three before you lose all your baby teeth. Math, astronomy, military strategy. Because you are not a child, you are an heir. You don't have friends, only watchers. No one tells you that Rome fears you more than your mother, because your mother is Cleopatra, but you might be Caesar. And then, your mother dies. Suddenly, no one says why. You are elsewhere, maybe at the Hermonthis Palace, days away from Alexandria. One morning your mother's guards no longer arrive. An old tutor calls you over, takes your hand and says nothing. You hear no shouting, but you understand everything has collapsed. From that day on, no one calls you Caesarion anymore. They just say, young man. Rome sends envoys, but not to bring you home. Octavian, the man who defeated your mother, took Alexandria and will become Augustus. The first emperor of Rome gives an order, bring the boy, not to crown him, but to kill a legend before it grows. Because if Caesarion lives, he is the legitimate Caesar born before Octavian's adoption, which means he has the legal right to inherit the empire. At age 17, you understand that your blood is valuable, and because of that, it must be drained. There's no official record. Just a few brief lines, Caesarion was killed under Octavian's orders. As a matter of state security, one command, one blade, no crown, no funeral. Just a boy with the wrong blood born at the wrong time. Not Cleopatra, not Antony, not war, but the silent death of a child ending the Ptolemaic dynasty after nearly 300 years. From then on, no more pharaohs. No more independent Alexandria. No more bodies carrying both Greek and Roman blood in one vessel. Caesarion died, and with him, the final hope that Egypt could ever choose its own fate. Maybe the ending wasn't a queen holding a snake. Maybe it was a teenager in a silk robe holding a map of Egypt and whispering in Greek, I just wanted to live long enough to write one line of history myself. But history is always written by someone else. Cleopatra died. Caesarion died. Egypt became a colony. Alexandria bled and was rewritten. When the pen replaced the sword and Cleopatra became the Eastern Serpent, Octavian. Now Augustus, the first emperor of Rome, didn't just conquer Egypt with armies. He conquered it with a story. Here's what he did. Erected statues of Caesar, with no Cleopatra beside him. Erased her name from the map of power, and allowed Roman historians to rewrite the entire legend of Cleopatra into a tabloid piece. Cleopatra through Roman historians' eyes. A lustful queen who seduced men and destroyed empires with eyeliner. Sound familiar? Do you know why? Because 99% of ancient historical sources about Cleopatra that survive come from Plutarch, Dio Cassius Suetonius, and they all wrote under the Roman Empire. You think they were objective? No. They wrote for their paycheck, and the man signing it wanted the Queen of Egypt remembered as an example of how powerful women die early. Roman sources painted her as a woman who wore serpents instead of crowns, a slave to flesh who ruined two great men, scheming like Hera, cruel like Medusa, and ambitious like Brutus. Not diplomat, scholar speaker of 7 languages, all erased, repackaged into sexualized weapons. Cleopatra wasn't killed with a knife. She was assassinated with language in every story manuscript and marketplace satire. Shakespeare came along and half helped 1,500 years later. Shakespeare writes Antony and Cleopatra. And yes, the play immortalizes her name, but it also locks in the image of Queen who died for love, ignores almost all of her political career, turns her into a romantic victim, not a power holder. Shakespeare wasn't the enemy, but he inherited the Roman version, put poetic lipstick on it, and the whole world drank it without asking questions. And Western pop culture did the rest. Elizabeth Taylor, in purple gowns, peacock feathers, strutting like a goddess of incense. Cleopatra became the seductive queen with midnight eyes, a side character in Caesar's Antony's or Hollywood story. No one mentions she once ran an empire during wartime. Only who did she sleep with in the ashes of Alexandria? In statues with names chiseled off. In the eyes of a queen who once commanded in 3 languages, but was later described as a warning for ambitious men. Cleopatra once had it all: power, intellect, language, diplomacy. But history rarely forgives a woman who had everything except submission. And tonight, if you hear the wind from the desert, it may not be a serpent's hiss, but the Queen's voice whispering. They will retell my story the way they want, but as long as they say my name, I still live. You've heard of Cleopatra since childhood, maybe in movies, in books, in comics, on memes. But do you really know who she was? Over 2,000 years, Cleopatra wore many faces. A seductive demon, as told by Rome Cleopatra. A dangerous woman, Cleopatra. Someone who used sex to manipulate Cleopatra. The symbol of powerful women. National disaster. This was the version Rome wanted you to believe. A woman leading 2 great men into the pyre of love and ruin. A fashion goddess, as told by Hollywood Elizabeth Taylor in a shimmering robe. A metal crown eyeliner darker than destiny. Cleopatra became a symbol of sensuality, luxury, extravagance, and drama. But this version erased her political essence, her voice, leaving only glamour and gowns. A brilliant ruler, as told by modern historians, recently scholars have tried to reclaim the real Cleopatra. A woman fluent in multiple languages, a skilled diplomat deftly navigating power between 2 empires, a leader who kept Egypt standing while the world was being swallowed by Rome. But it's incredibly hard because authentic footage doesn't exist, no photos, no writings in her own hand. And amidst all those images, the truth fades like old paint. Maybe Cleopatra wasn't as beautiful as paintings portray. Maybe she wasn't as seductive as rumors suggest. Maybe she loved, felt anger, felt disappointment like any human, yet was recorded as a legendary poisoner with a scowl. Was she a goddess, a serpent, a symbol, a strategist? A young woman wrapped in a carpet when no choices remained. Maybe she was all of those. Or maybe she was nothing except a woman fighting to protect her country, family, and her voice in a world written by armored men. And you can choose. Tonight you can choose the version of Cleopatra you believe in. Maybe you like the queen with dark eyeliner who released a snake into her gown, then raised her head in godlike death. Maybe you prefer the 18-year-old who dared to speak the people's language, to rule a realm that wasn't hers by birth. Or maybe you imagine that in the end Cleopatra didn't die. She was just waiting for someone to tell her true story. And if you could whisper one thing to her, say this: I know you weren't just Caesar's shadow or Antony's myth. I know you weren't a serpent, a goddess, or just a Roman sexual fantasy. You were a woman once on this earth, and you fought like we all do. That's it. The lamps of Alexandria have gone dark. The dynasty is gone. Her name erased from statues. But if you still remember, if you still listen, Cleopatra never truly left the throne of your mind.